Hello, everybody. My name is Robert Linkle, and welcome to Aging with Strength. This is our first podcast, and hopefully there will be many more to come, pending that you're all enjoying this. I am filming from home or recording from home, so you may hear kids and wives and dogs and everything else in the background. But I wanted to jump into our first topic. Aging with Strength is kind of a focus for us on busting myths and setting new intentions for how older adults are supposed to train. And our definition of training an older adult, somebody over the age of 50-ish. Some organizations, AARP and such, they look at it as 60 and over, 65 and over, somewhere around in there. But with us, really the age of 30 on the bell curve, you're on the other side. You're on the descent of coming back down. But looking at the older adult, we're gonna say and kind of claim things around age 50 and then moving our way up. Okay. So I have six what I'm going to call common practices that we're going to talk about. These will be our first six podcasts as we go through. Common practice is a term that I kind of coined on the personal training world, as in these are things that personal trainers do just because this is the way that we learned when we started, and we just kind of followed. But not a lot of trainers really question why they're doing that or why to follow that, and try to look or think outside the box to maybe do something a little bit different. So these common practices are seen in almost every gym in America, maybe even in the world. And specifically and especially with older adults, you see these six, that are really abused, is the way that I'm going to say this. So these are very common practices that should probably not be so common. Number one is we don't lift heavy things. Somewhere along the lines, somebody said, if you're over the age of 50, probably shouldn't be lifting anything over the 30 pounds, and especially shouldn't be lifting anything over your head, which is our second one. Most of the movements that you should be performing, you should be seated because it's dangerous to stand up and lift weights. You shouldn't perform any kind of power movements. Those are very dangerous if you move quickly, anything that you do. And you should constantly be under supervision of a professional. Can't exercise on your own. In many cases, you need a medical clearance from your doctor even to participate in a physical fitness program. So we're going to dive kind of right into number one here of why older adults are supposed to lift heavy weights as opposed to not. And where the 30 pounds came from, I have no idea. I don't know where that came about or what the averages came into individuals that were getting hurt and they asked how much weight they were lifting or whatnot. I have no idea. But there's a misconception, a stigma, a mindset. We see it starting, in the 80s and 90s for women specifically, that lifting weights are going to get you big and bulky. That men that lift weights and get big and bulky, they're going to be inflexible. That older adults are going to get hurt. And those were really the kind of the common misconceptions that come along with strength training. All these have been proven false, but not a lot of people know about them. They still kind of continue to assume that this is accurate information. So the look at or the assumption that older adults shouldn't lift anything heavy is really a very big misconception for us that we have to kind of constantly battle as personal trainers when we get brand new clients that come in and they say, I had a lady that I came in and said, I understand you have a reputation for training older adults. I said, yes, I do. And she goes, where are all the chairs in your facility at? And I said, what do you mean chairs? And she goes, yeah, we're supposed to sit down. Where are all the chairs? And this is the misconception. When you're over the age of 50, you're supposed to come into whatever fitness center you're in. You're supposed to sit down, and people are going to give you little weights. And you're going to take those little weights and do front shoulder raises and lateral raises and bicep curls. And you're going to do all that seated, and we're not going to do anything over your head. And all of those misconceptions or those common practices are all kind of lumped into one. But the key with that is that they're not lifting a lot of weight, or in some cases you're lifting these little air-filled medicine balls that hardly weigh anything. And the benefit of all of that is really minimal. The amount of time, up to an hour in some cases, 2 to 3 days a week, that people are spending in these classes doing these restricted small, what we call auxiliary or simple based movements, one joint at a time with light little weights, really there's no benefit. There's a saying we've all heard, it's better than nothing. And I can't stand that saying. I would rather someone take a smaller amount of time and do great things with it than do minimal effort, something very simple for a longer period of time. And so there's great statistics to go with this. I'll flip over here to some of my stats. I love stats. I'm all about stats. They did a research study. There's many of these as I go through this. I will reference a lot of different books, a lot of different reading material that I have. But multiple studies here that come from 1997, 95, 2005, 2009. A lot of these different studies are replicated in different formats to make sure that it's delivering consistency. So the original one looked at strength training for older adults, basically 50 and over, 1 day a week compared to 2 days and then 3 days a week. They were lifting for up to 30 minutes. They had 6 primary components that they were focused on: a push, a pull, a press, and then for their lower half, the same thing, a quad, a hamstring, and then a leg press. And so they worked these 6 components. They did 3 sets of 12 within a half hour, basically 1 day a week, 2 days a week, or 3 days a week. The 1 day a week group had a 5% increase over their, I think it was 12 weeks of training. The 2 days a week had a 16% increase, and 3 days had a 12. So the 2 days a week actually showed to be more beneficial. And the bouts of times were 30 minutes or less. It was basically dependent on how quickly or how efficiently people could work going through their strength training program. And the results they came up with, they had increases in bone density all the way across the board. But the 2 days and 3 days a week had obviously more. Actually, the 2 days a week had the greatest amount. And they had lean muscle masses at an average of 3.1 pounds increased with a 2.4 body fat decrease during that time. And all they were doing was strength training. So when we talk about a lot can be done with a little amount of time, they don't need hours. They don't need 5 days a week. We're talking 20 to 30 minutes, 2 times a week can actually show some very great benefits there. And that was men and women mixed. Another one here that I had bookmarked: women between the ages of 50 and 70, postmenopausal, went through a 2 days a week strength training program, performing 6 exercises, 3 sets of 8 on each one, had a 3-pound increase in lean muscle mass, decrease of 1.4 pounds of body fat, and then increased 1%, some of them up to 2% of their bone density during that time. So we had some great increases there. Bone density and the battle, I like to call it, against osteoporosis and arthritis really are the two that we see the most for the older adults, are drastically reduced. You can't really stop having arthritis or osteoporosis necessarily as you get older. You can greatly decrease it or greatly improve your day-to-day life, your quality of life with the increase in strength training. And so both of these, they had a men's study and a women's study, both 12 weeks long. They had 3-pound increase for men, 2.9 increase for women, decrease in body fat by 3 pounds for the ladies, by 4 pounds for the men. They even increased by 250 calories their food daily on the days that they were training. So giving them extra calories, 2 to 3 days a week of strength training, 30 minutes or less to complete their strength training program, anywhere from 4 to 6 exercises for 3 sets of 12 in this case. So again, not a lot of work. Not when we look at total volume or our overall loads moved at the end of the day, this isn't a ton of work. We have a little program that we run where I'm hoping to get people to move every other day for 20 minutes. And ideally that'd be in the weight room doing what we call our 6 pillars of strength training, where you're doing a row, a split stance, some kind of overhead movement, a hinge, a carry, and some kind of core complex component. And those 6 pieces are going to build a pretty well-rounded individual, a pretty strong individual is really what we're focused on with that. So if we can do that every other day for 20 minutes, or incorporate in more than just walking, more than just sitting on the recumbent bike, like strength training is such an important part for the older adult as they age. There's something called the SAID principle. The SAID principle stands for, it's an acronym for specific adaptations to imposed demands. The specific adaptation is when we look at our bone density, we want that bone density to stay strong and or increase if we haven't been strength training. And for it to increase or stay strong, there has to be some kind of change in adaptation, okay? So this is specific. We want the bones to get strong or maintain. And then the adaptation is if they aren't strong, to get strong. The imposed demand, specific adaptation to imposed demand, the imposed demand is the load that we're lifting. So if we're continually giving people 2, 3, 4 pounds, little tiny dumbbells, medicine balls that weigh less than 5 pounds, your body's imposed demand is very, very small. It's just not enough to challenge you. And I get arguments from people all the time. Well, if I just do push-ups and lunges and TRX rows and I work with my body weight, I'm getting stronger. I know I'm stronger. That's true. You get stronger to a point. To your body weight is a load to move, but eventually your body's ability to move that load strength-wise taps out. You work outside a strength component, and then eventually it turns into a muscular endurance component. So if I can do 20 push-ups, that's pretty strong. When I get up to 40 push-ups, am I necessarily stronger? There's an argument for that. You are more muscularly endured. Your heart is pumping more blood to your muscles to allow you to push the same amount of weight, body weight, over and over and over and over again. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you're stronger, okay? So to get pure strength, to get an increase, imposed demand onto those bones, to make the bones harder, to get your bone density to grow greater, to get your musculature to grow greater, okay? Your muscle endings have an actin and a myosin, 2 different ends that come together and they like shake hands in the middle. The more you strength train, the tighter that handshake gets and the stronger your muscles are. You don't necessarily need them to tear and get bigger. These are good tears that I'm talking about, where you get hypertrophy, you get the muscle to get bigger and you look like Arnold. But we need the handshakes to get tighter, to have a harder grip, and that's where you increase your ability to be strong. So this imposed demand must be great. And by great, I mean, when you are challenging yourself from 8 to 12 reps, if you can get to 8 and it was super easy, you need more weight. If you can't get to 12, it's probably too heavy. So we're working within that range. And this doesn't mean, all out, no matter what my mechanics look like, I can achieve this weight. We have to stay within some proper mechanics. So when performing these lifts, you're in control. I like to work 2 or 3 to 1 tempos. What that means is, for instance, bicep curl, a 2 to 1 tempo would be 1 second up, which is the concentric, and then eccentric is the 2 seconds down. And people always say, why is the down listed second? In our industry, we always list eccentrics first, because not every movement starts with a concentric movement, okay? So working these controlled tempos, smooth movements, basically 1 or 2 seconds, consistent movements where you're not heaving, swinging at the back and such. The specific adaptation to the demand of the weight that you're imposing on your body will increase bone density, it'll increase muscular strength, and overall your body's eventually going to get used to that, and you're going to have to increase something, either the varied angle that you're working with. So that's where we have so many different rows we can do. We have so many different presses, so many different carries. So you're not doing the exact same thing all the time, because your body will get very used to that. So you want to impose different demands on and on and on, but challenges to your body where it needs to change, it needs to increase and grow to get stronger, to get better. And eventually you'll be working with a certain amount of weight, and that weight will become fairly consistent, and I'll even say easy for you to manipulate, and it's time to start to increase it again. And at some point you're going to get strong, and that's what we want. And then you're going to be in maintenance mode, and not necessarily maintenance of, I can always do 3 sets of 12 with 30 pounds. I want you to be able to lift more than that, but in different angles, different positions, different pulleys or resistant bands or strict weight or momentum weight, like push presses or jerks. You have so many different components that you can work with in there, where you're not having to challenge yourself by lifting heavier and heavier, but in more difficult angles or different positions to put your body in. Always needing a new challenge is the point. Okay, a great example of the SAID principle are your hands. If you're any kind of a labor worker, okay, when I was growing up, I was a landscaper from 13 to 16 years old. And every summer, my hands would get super rough because the imposed demand of the work that I was doing outside required my body to put extra layers of skin down to build my calluses, because the specific adaptation needed, I needed more skin there because I had a demand on this area. was saying, if you're not going to fix this or give me something else, we're going to continue to tear and hurt. And so your body grew more skin. My body grew more skin there. It built calluses to help me, roughen up my hands and strengthen my hands to be able to do that job every summer. So our body is amazingly designed to do things like that. And that's something that with very simple amounts, 20 minutes, really twice, maybe 3 times a week, but definitely twice a week, 20 to 30 minutes, you can have a great, great increase in what you're doing. If you don't have a personal trainer, I encourage you to get one. I'm definitely going to do a podcast in the future on how you can select a personal trainer, what you should be looking for. But if you don't know what you're doing, get someone. If you don't know how to change your oil or rotate your tires, you take it to a mechanic. You don't know how to do your own dental work, you go to the dentist. Fitness is no different. And the scariest part of this is that we go to the gym and we try to do it on our own, and we're risking our body at the expense of it. Like you do something wrong in there and rupture a disc in your back or tear a tendon in your shoulder, you're damaged goods now. So make sure you're selecting someone to help you do this. Talk to those people about a proper philosophy and a program on how you do it. But strength training is such an important part. As we age, I strongly encourage you, strongly, pun intended, encourage you to start to incorporate that into your life if you're not currently. Please feel free to share this podcast with any friends, family members. We're just getting things kicked off, so the more followers we get, more opportunities we'll have to share more information with you. My name is Robert Linkle. This is Aging with Strength, podcast number 1. If you're an older adult, you should be lifting weights. I hope that message got through to you. Don't fall into common practice. Get out there and strength train. Think outside the box. Get your body strong and increase your quality of life. Have a good day. Thanks.